So basically what we've learned so far is that cells have a mechanism within them that tell them when to start growing and when to stop growing, and that some cells of the body grow very quickly and other cells of the body don't divide at all. How does this work? And what does that mean for us? Well, let's keep reading. Page 251. Moving right along. Did we go over any key concepts? Let's check our objectives. Not yet. Okay. Cell cycle regulators. For many years, biologists searched for a substance that might regulate the cell, something that would tell cells when it was time to divide, duplicate their chromosomes, or enter another phase of the cycle. In the early 1980s, biologists found the substance. Several scientists, including Tim Hunt of Great Britain and Mark Kirschner of the United States, discovered that cells in mitosis contained a protein that, when injected into a non-dividing cell, would cause a mitotic spindle to form. What is the mitotic spindle? That are these little lines. Such an experiment is shown in 10.8. To their surprise, they discovered that the amount of this protein in the cell rose and fell in time with the cell cycle. They decided to call this protein cyclin because it seems to regulate the cell cycle. Investigators have since discovered a family of closely related proteins known as cyclins that are involved in the cell cycle regulation. Okay? Cyclins regulate the timing of the cell cycle in eukaryotic cells. This is a great quiz question. What is one thing that regulates the cell cycle? And that's one of our objectives. Identify a factor that can stop cells from growing. Describe how the cell cycle is regulated. That's part of cyclin right there. All right, let's keep going. Now, internal regulators. That's right here. The discovery of cyclins was just the beginning. More recently, dozens of other proteins have been discovered that also help regulate the cell cycle. There are two types of regulatory proteins, those that occur inside the cell and those that occur outside the cell. All right? Internal regulators. Proteins that respond to events inside the cell are called internal regulators. Internal regulators allow the cell cycle to proceed only when certain processes have happened inside the cell. For example, several regulatory proteins make sure that a cell does not enter mitosis until all of its chromosomes have been replicated. Another regulatory protein prevents a cell from entering anaphase until all its chromosomes are attached to the mitotic spindle. So it's not a vocabulary word, but this is a great idea, something I want you to know. It's also a good quiz question. What are internal regulators? And you can say they're proteins or substances that control the cell cycle from inside, basically making sure that certain things happen. External regulators. Proteins that respond to events outside the cell are called external regulators. External regulators direct the cell to speed up or slow down the cell cycle. Growth factors are among the most important external regulators. Okay, so what's an important external regulator? A growth factor. They stimulate the growth of division of cells. Growth regulators are especially important during the embryonic development and wound healing. Molecules found on the surface of neighboring cells often have an opposite effect, causing cells to slow down or stop their cell cycles. These signals prevent excessive cell growth and keep the tissue of the body from disrupting each other. So we learned about a couple of ways the cell is regulated by external chemicals and proteins, such as growth factors that tell people to grow, and also on the outside of cells are messengers that tell the cell to stop. So when they bump up against each other, they stop growing, just like in our picture here. See, when the cells start growing together, they finally touch, and when they touch, on the surface of the cells are external regulators which tell the cells slow down. Cyclins. Cyclins are proteins that regulate the cell cycle. All right, let's move on to the next video and the next page, 252.